What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham Gius and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the August 2nd, 2021 edition of Raw Talk. So, as has been the case for the last couple of weeks now, this was hosted in the studio at WWE headquarters by Kayla Braxton and Matt Camp. Now, from what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, based off who's hosting each show, it looks like Kayla and Matt Camp will be in charge of Raw Talk, with Kayla more so hosting Raw Talk than Matt Camp. Matt Camp is more so in the hosting role over on Talking Smack, joined by Peter Rosenberg. Peter Rosenberg, I just don't really care for in the show at all. So honestly, at this point, I think I enjoy Raw Talk more than I do Talking Smack. But they're around the same length. They're around 20 minutes. You take out the recaps and the replays and the bullshit, which they're kind of going a little bit back on. They're kind of minimizing a bit more now compared to recent weeks where, like maybe last week's episode of Raw Talk or the week before that, they literally would have like a 2-minute replay of what we already saw on Raw. We had that here too. They replayed Goldberg's answer to Bobby Lashley from the start of Raw. It's like, why am I rewatching this when we literally just saw it on Raw, considering this airs right after Raw on Peacock when we just saw it like 3 hours ago? You know what I mean? But to open the show, they kind of run down the biggest headlines from Raw, including Nikki Ash beating Charlotte Flair in a no-holds-barred main event, Goldberg accepting Bobby Lashley's match, WWE Championship Challenge, whatever, for a match at SummerSlam, McIntyre's sword. That was literally the headline. Not even the fact that McIntyre beat Veer and Shanky in a 2-on-1 handicap match by DQ, but rather the fact that McIntyre had his sword out. Don't get your fucking mind out of the gutter, people. But the fact that McIntyre almost killed these people with his sword, so whatever. They recap Reggie successfully defending the 24/7 championship against Akira Tozawa, Omos beating Riddle 1-on-1, and Mansoor and Ali losing to Mason T-Bar in tag team action. They also question, will Ali continue to help Mansoor and be in his corner after they lost their latest match to Mason T-Bar on Monday night. They also talk about Ali helping Mansoor after the matchup before throwing it to Mansoor and Ali, their in-person interview backstage at Raw. Ali says that Mansoor dropped the ball on Monday night and that he was the reason why they lost, and he was the one who was pinned in the match. And then when Kevin Patrick brings up, well, you kind of helped Mansoor afterward. You went to go help him and you protected him from Mason T-Bar. What are your thoughts on that? He says he has no comment. He doesn't want to discuss it. He walks off. And Mansoor gets really, really happy thinking, I think Ali likes me and I have an idea. And then he kind of walks off and we don't find out what that idea is, and I assume we find out next week on Raw. Matt Camp brings up that Omos has got to be feeling great coming off his big win over Matt Riddle earlier on in the show. And that Camp also kind of reemphasizes that Riddle needs Orton back. So they are mentioning Randy Orton. They mentioned him quite a bit here. They mentioned him on Raw. Riddle said that he had Orton flowing through his veins. We have no idea where Orton is. At last word, he was on like the disabled inactive list on the internal roster page for Raw, but we don't know what that injury would be. We don't know if he's taking time off. I feel like if it was something simple, we would have found out by now because he's been off the show for almost 2 months. So I have no idea what the hell is going on with Orton. I would hope that he's back by SummerSlam. It doesn't look like he will be. I guess they could be holding off until like the Raw before SummerSlam or SummerSlam itself, but wouldn't you want to advertise the match as Riddle and Orton against Omos and Styles? I don't know where Styles was on the show either. They were in Chicago. Maybe they didn't want Omos to get cheered because AJ obviously would have been cheered in Chicago. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, Omos beat Riddle 1-on-1 on Raw this week. They also recap Reggie's win. I hate that I'm even talking about this, but he successfully defended the 24/7 championship against Akira Tozawa on Raw in a completely pointless match before they throw it to Reggie and Kevin Patrick backstage at Raw. Reggie says that he's on cloud 9 and feeling great coming off his latest title defense, and that he's had 3 successful title defenses in the last week alone over Chad Gable on SmackDown, R-Truth last week on Raw, and Akira Tozawa this week on Raw. And he feels after a win like that he deserves deep dish pizza courtesy of Chicago. Doesn't sleep much nowadays, and he always has to watch his back, including in the bathroom, which I didn't need to hear about. But he also talks about the crowd and how electric they were in Chicago, although they were kind of quiet for his match, and justifiably so. And Kevin Patrick says, oh, can you teach me some moves? And Reggie says, no, but I like your suit. And that was basically the extent of the conversation. Matt Camp and Kayla Braxton then recap Drew McIntyre's handicap win over Veer and Shanky, winning by disqualification before threatening to kill Shanky with a fucking sword. That was interesting. And Matt Camp might be the only one who has ever said this, having said here on the show, I want to see Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal one-on-one. Again, said no one ever aside from Matt Camp. Who cares about this feud? Drew was well received in Chicago. That's great. I know it's a logical feud to do, and I've said that for weeks now. Like, oh, it's probably a logical feud given their history and all this other shit. I just don't give a fuck about Jinder Mahal. I'm going to be completely honest. I just don't care. I really don't. They interviewed Drew for the upteenth time on this fucking show. I feel like Drew should have his own talk show segment here on Raw Talk because he's on every goddamn episode. And I love Drew McIntyre, but like even he's got to know they're overexposing the guy by putting him on every fucking week. Drew says that someone eventually is going to push him, or someone eventually was going to push him too far in order to break out the sword, and that's what we saw on Monday night. They pushed him too far, he broke out the sword, and he sent them fleeing out of the ring and to the back. He said that Mahal should keep running, but it doesn't matter because he's going to keep chasing him. He wants his revenge, and he's not going to stop until he gets his revenge on Jinder Mahal. And Jinder, having known Drew for so long now, knows what Drew is capable of. He knows he can be violent. So he doesn't know why Jinder continues to push Drew's buttons, knowing that Drew is going to always bite back. Kevin Patrick asks, what's the name of the sword? We've had this sword on TV now for like 9 months. We don't know what Drew was calling it until now. He says the sword's name is Angela. I don't know if it's always been Angela. I mean, obviously it's Vince McMahon's sword in real life. I don't know if the sword has always been named Angela or if he just kind of came up with the name now. But this was really touching. So he said that he named it after his late mom, who passed away years ago. But he talks about it in his book, out now, check it out. I actually have a copy. I've yet to finish it, but he talks about his late mom quite a bit in his book. But he says that, she had a vengeful side and she was always very resilient. He kind of recaps her story here on Raw Talk for those that aren't aware. But she had a vengeful side, as does Drew, which is why that sword and Angela are coming for Jinder Mahal very soon. And then to end the show, they throw it back to the studio. Matt Camp and Caleb Braxton talk about Goldberg versus Bobby Lashley being made official for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. Oh, joy. And that was Raw Talk in a nutshell. As I've said the last couple of weeks, these new formatted editions of Raw Talk and Talking Smack are completely pointless. They just don't really offer anything of any real color or spark or excitement. It's just the same studio setting shit we've gotten from the Bump for years now. And that's fine. If people enjoy that stuff, it's cool. But even those interviews are more in-depth than what we get the fuck here in Raw Talk. They interview the talent backstage for maybe a minute or two. And then that's it. They throw it back to the studio for more pointless analysis and recap of shit we literally just saw on Raw 5 minutes earlier. So if you didn't think the shows were worth watching before, they're even less worth watching now that they're in the studio setting and not doing it backstage with the talent in person, which is personally what I would prefer. So a very ho-hum edition of Raw Talk based on its new standards. It is what it is. Thanks, guys, for checking out this review of the August 2nd, 2021 edition of Raw Talk. I break it down every single week here on the show and Talking Smack on Sundays. So be sure to subscribe for more reviews of that. Q&A videos every single Wednesday. We went live for #AskGSM last Wednesday, and we actually went live on Saturday. Kind of spur-of-the-moment thing after Bray Wyatt was shockingly released. I went live for that on Saturday and discussed that for over an hour. So subscribe for more of that stuff. We had a new interview go up earlier today with NXT superstar Roderick Strong, leader of the Diamond Mine, or the Diamond Mine himself, as he called himself in our interview. So he kind of explained that whole thing. But yeah, that interview went up earlier. Check that out. Be sure to check out the article version going up soon on dailyddt.com. And another interview coming up in the next week here on the channel and over on Bleacher Report as well. So keep an eye out for that stuff. But also be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.